We are Rogue Media Sports.
Want to make Mom's Day? Get to your Nordstrom Rack now and score amazing deals for Mother's Day, which is Sunday, May 12th. Find tons of gifts from only $30 at Nordstrom Rack. Fragrance, jewelry, luxury bags, activewear, beauty, and more. Save on Kate Spade New York, Stuart Weitzman, and Ted Baker London. Great brands, great prices. So shop your Nordstrom Rack store today and treat Mom to the good stuff from just $30.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It is the Doomsday Podcast live from 251A in the Hall of Fame level suite. Mark Murray's and Carolyn Murray's suite up here. So excited. And the Cowboys' 24-22 victory. Joined by Ed Werder, as always.
There's probably, 10, 15 people in here?
Yeah, they have
remained. Not used to working in an audience this big.
They have remained. It's very intimidating. Okay, guys, it's enough. But Ed has been with Westwood One, working the sideline all evening. And Ed, being down there, being a part of this thing, was it loud? I mean, we were up here. Well, I was in the press box, actually. But, I mean, the suite level was very loud. Down there on the field, do you think the crowd actually made some difference this evening? I mean, this has not been a great home field advantage over the years.
Well, it has been this year. They're 8-1 at home.
Well, that's a fair point.
The most interesting thing that I saw down on the sidelines tonight was the whole Sebastian Janikowski drama playing out. You know, he tried a field goal of 58 yards, I think, at the end of the half. Looked like he grabbed his left hamstring immediately, did not come back out for the start of the second half. So that left Mike Dixon, who's their normal punter over there. He was spending, even though he was going to have to kick the field goals if there were to be any such attempts, and there were not ultimately. It was all about touchdowns and two-point conversions for Seattle after that. He was going to have to kick a field goal, and he wasn't working on his field goal kicking at all over there. All he did was, I was standing right by the net, all he did was punt. He punted and he worked on his drop kicking.
Yeah, they almost were going to do a drop kick.
They did drop kick the onside kick at the end of the game. It was the worst onside kick I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was a horrible attempt. Now, did you try to run up and talk to Sebastian? How did you handle that down there? I mean, most times they should not ask a 40-year-old man that out of shape to attempt a 50. He's a big man.
He has like 58 field goals of 50 or more yards in his career.
Well, that's fine, but he's
40. So don't demean him just because he's Polish and slightly heavy.
No, it certainly didn't have anything to do with his nationality, Ed. But no, that was a big attempt, and I do think it kind of colored their whole rest of the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every time they got down there, they had to think about that.
Became four-down territory every time, and they had to go for two-point conversions.
Now, I haven't heard this yet. We'll hear it on the podcast. Your exclusive interview with Amari Cooper after the game, was that good? Did Amari open up to you? How exciting was that? I mean, he's a quiet young man. How did he? Several catches for over 100. Over 100 yards.
He had 105 or 106 yards, I think. Which he's been phenomenal. If you look at his numbers at home, it's ridiculous what he's done in this stadium since he's been acquired. And obviously, Gary Brown, the running backs coach, after the game called him a godsend. So I think that's appropriate here in front of this Baylor audience, don't you?
No, they're not all Baylor.
They're not Baylor people.
Yeah, we got some Longhorns.
But there's some religious affiliation. Oh, we got all kinds of hand gestures going on
Seminoles.
here.
Yeah, you guys.
Some of which I think are socially acceptable. I'm not really sure. Well, that one wasn't for certain.
Yeah.
And that's on Facebook Live.
Yeah, that did. Thanks, Brendan. That was on Facebook Live. All right, it is time to discuss 24-22 and where the Cowboys are going to end up. Is it New Orleans? Is it Los Angeles? Doomsday Podcast. Frito, play the music. It is the Doomsday Podcast live from 251A in the Hall of Fame level suite. Mark Murray's and Carolyn Murray's suite up here. So excited. And the Cowboys' 24-22 victory. Joined by Ed Werder, as always. I thought when they desperately needed to get down there, after the interception, K.J. Wright, now you could say, was that a bad throw? Was that pass interference? Well, you could have gone either way on that. But when the Cowboys had to have Zeke, 44-yard run, bounces it outside, goes down the sideline, and
big run in the first half to set up the touchdown right before the half.
Yeah, and interesting, I thought, on offense too. You know, we've talked a lot about the inefficiency in the red zone. Wasn't that interesting? I was listening to Aikman even while I was out here, to what he was saying, and he kept saying, and they ended up getting the ball to Cooper finally. He was saying, hey, they got a great matchup over here. Flowers is banged up. I mean, they don't really move their corners against the best receiver, so wherever he lined up, you need to go to him, and they did. But wasn't that interesting that Linehan or Dak, whoever was kind of making the read, which was Dak, on that one deal it looked like, oh, what a horrible throw, the fade to Gallup. And then they came right back on the next play and he dropped one in there, a gorgeous throw. That's one of the best things I think you can say about Dak is that he can really look bad at times.
He's undeterred. He's undeterred.
But he kind of can come back and recover from that. Now, there have been Cowboys teams. Did you not have that sense of dread for the Cowboys in a sense when we've seen this before, when they had that interception in the end zone? To me, I'm like, okay, there it is. That's an enormous play.
From the sideline, Pete Carroll was going wild after that pick. I mean, throwing haymakers, and you could just tell that he thought that was going to change the outcome of the game, that it was that pivotal play.
And the reason Ed was on the sideline, just a reminder, Westwood 1 has used Ed several times this season, and including a home game this evening, and so Ed was down there tonight. Usually Ed's in very comfortable, really good-looking sneakers, dress sneakers we call them, and kind of Travis Matthew sportswear, and tonight you went with a sport coat. Did you feel like playoff you needed to kind of raise your game a little bit?
I went with the suede boots and the little jacket, no tie.
Yeah,
I thought so.
We'll hear from Jerry. I want to get your take on Chris Richard, and we'll get Jerry's take. One thing I wanted to say from talking to Jerry after the game, he did feel that this was somewhat of a vindication for Jason Garrett, a guy that pretty much everybody was ready to fire, including this podcast, when he was 3-5, and when the Cowboys were 3-5, and then Garrett has brought this thing back. Jerry has said, in general, Jason needs to win playoff games to sort of change his story.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of interesting that in the last two or so weeks, he has several different times mentioned Jason Garrett and his personal need as a head coach to have postseason success, which had eluded him to this point. Now, he was 1-2 going into this game, so now he's 2-2, and if he can get out of the divisional round and get to a championship game, then he'll really have accomplished something, because they haven't done that since Barry Switzer was the head coach here. I think it was important for Jason Garrett to win this game, and I did think it was curious that Jerry said that publicly, that he seemingly reinforced that by going to practice and scrutinizing the practices this week. Made me think he wanted to see how Jason was getting this team ready to play. Because Jerry said this is a playoff team. In his mind, this is a team that can win in the postseason. And so I think if it went badly, he wanted to know what it was during the week maybe that the players thought was not handled well. But obviously that didn't happen. They played great. A young team that when faced with impending doom that Seattle was going to turn the game around on them, even after they gave up the long touchdown at the end in the final minute and a half, they didn't really waver. So credit to them. And you mentioned Chris Richard. I know his game plan, because I talked to him before the game, was, hey, the only thing he talked about was stopping the running game. And they did that pretty well in the first meeting. Carson had 100 yards in the game, but he took 32 carries to get it. And tonight they only averaged 3 yards a carry. This is the best running team in football this year. No team ran the ball a higher percentage of the time than the Seattle Seahawks. And so the Cowboys...
73 yards rushing, and one of those came on a 28-yard run.
That's half their average for the year. They averaged over 150 yards rushing and I think 7 times had over 155 yards rushing. So what the Cowboys did in that respect was exactly according to their game plan and their priorities. But then it seemed like after they did that for 4 straight series, Seattle switched to the passing game, and then all of a sudden the Cowboys were unable to deal with that part of the game.
Yeah, which makes you wonder, hey, should they have done that, from the start? Now, you had a chance to visit with the Chris Richard walking off the field, I believe it was tonight. Now, did you get? He's got a big day. Just so people know this, we've talked a little bit about. He's got 3 interviews set up tomorrow. You'll hear Jerry talk about it, and you'll hear me joking with him. But Stephen Ross was in the stadium tonight, the Miami Dolphins owner. So he was in here getting a feel and maybe watching Richard down the sideline, ready to interview him tomorrow. 2 more interviews that'll take place. Did you get any lead from Richard? What was his mentality after one? I mean, this had to be a great moment for him to beat his old team.
He confessed that as we walked off the field after the game that this was a moment of personal vindication. After the season, Pete Carroll, and they missed the playoffs in 2017, Pete Carroll fired all 3 of his coordinators, and Chris Richard was one of those. He basically lost his job because Pete preferred to bring back Ken Norton, a former Cowboys linebacker, as a defensive coordinator. That made Richard available, and Richard winds up coming here as a replacement for Matt Eberflus as the top defensive assistant to Rod Marinelli. Marinelli lets him call the defenses. He's so impressed with this young guy, and now he's put himself in a position where he might leave the organization to become a head coach at, Miami, Tampa Bay, and the Jets. Are those the 3 teams, I think, that have asked to interview him? So he said he probably wouldn't sleep at all tonight because he's really spent very little time preparing for the interviews, and all of his efforts have been devoted to ensuring that the Cowboys perform their best on defense in this game. Yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see what he has to say on that front and how his day goes, because then he's got to immediately after tomorrow night we'll know where the Cowboys are going. It's either New Orleans or it'll be Los Angeles. It'll be the Coliseum or the Superdome. I would have to say, Ed, in my mind, I think the Superdome is a tougher place to play. I really do. I just think of the 2, that's a tougher environment to be in. All right, I think now would be a good time to listen, because I asked Jerry Jones about Chris Richard and what he could do to perhaps get Chris Richard to stay here with the Cowboys.
Is there anything you could do to try to keep Chris Richard? Right now he seems to have a lot of interest, like 3 interviews coming up. I know he's had a big impact on this team.
Well, it doesn't surprise me at all that clubs have the interest that they have in him. And there are no secrets in the NFL when it comes to people who can help you win football games. And he's a winner. He is a winner. And he's made a big impact on our team here, which is amazing considering he's just been here starting in spring. So he's obviously a very qualified individual as if you're looking for a head coach.
Have you thought about bad-mouthing him to maybe keep him here to sway teams not to go after him?
Well, I'd like to know why he called that last play of 31 by Byron Jones. I'd like to see what his defensive philosophy is there and tell everybody that he does that a lot.
Jerry, you have not been immune.
Be sure you get my wink here.
Jerry, you have not been immune to criticism for sticking with Jason over the years. It wasn't always easy. Do you feel a sense of vindication to see him get over that hurdle, not only for himself but also for you?
I do. It is a feeling that I'm proud for him. I know how hard he works. He's right there with the hardest working coach that we've had, and that's supposed to pay off. He certainly has some things that he's worked on, like all of us do, and he's gotten much better at it. But I know that he's worked real hard to put a team like this, young team, on the field. Has a lot of his fingerprint are on this team, and so I'm proud that he's having this success as a head coach.
You think this team is built to be able to go on the road? Obviously, both of these would be tough environments. New Orleans, a team you've had some success against, obviously, this season.
Yeah, I do. I think we're physical. Our defense is physical. I think our offense is physical. I think we have had road experience. we've had some tough hands on the road this year. So it isn't like that we've gone to school and made all A's. So seriously, we've had some real good experience to look at as to how to do better on the road. And so I think our adversity on the road actually, because it does most of the time in football, if you look at it positively, can help us on the road.
Speaking of adversity, how possible did you think tonight was after that Tennessee game midway through the season?
Well, I've always thought that if you could, you can. The Cowboys have a history of having some average records, let's say, in the past, and have come on and had really fine teams. It's just a journey. It's been described as a marathon, and you're going to have times when you're going to have to reinvent the wheel during a season. And like the old wagon train guys said, we're going to burn some of these wagons on the way out to California, break them down, float the Mississippi River. A lot of people are going to be born, a lot of people die. But I'm going to make it to California. I hope you're on the train with me. Well, that's kind of the way that you look at a football team, and we've got some guys that can get to California here, I think.
Did Tavon Austin show you today why you liked him so much? Why you traded for him?
Yes, he did. And I haven't checked on it. I think he's fine. And we probably, just from a safety, just fielding it issue, had Beasley back. But I sure thought he made the kind of plays that in the playoffs will win the game for you. And that's why he's here. He has the speed to make that kind of play, and you saw it out there today with him. And hopefully he's in good shape so that didn't tweak his hamstring, so we can have him for the next game.
Jerry, you talked about Jason learning and improving. What about you? Have you learned and improved? Do you feel like you're still learning and improving as well?
Of course, absolutely. I mean, and I'm not trying to be modest. I'm not trying to be anything. There is no question that we've had to adjust your thinking as time has gone along. The rules have changed. The time has changed. We had to change our colors when we basically went from not having free agency to free agency. It was a different deal when we walked in here and people couldn't move under the contracts. And then by the time that we got our feet up under us, then all of a sudden people started shuffling around. So I compare it to trying to hold Jell-O in each hand. It's hard to keep it all in. So really things have changed, but everybody's playing to the same rule, and some people have done real well with it. But to answer your question, absolutely, and frankly, particularly in just generally, not only the football, but also a lot of the other issues that are involved. I never thought that we would be dealing and accountable the way we are for the social issues. And it's because we've asked the world to look at us. When it turns away, we holler at them and say, look, come on now, look at us. Well, society said, if everybody's going to look at you, we want you to take some responsibility and act right with social issues. So that takes some learning.
Jerry, what were you thinking when Dak was flying through the air on that last run to the end zone?
What?
What went through your mind as Dak was flipping on that last run?
Well, I just was trying to figure out if you're talking about when he got flipped and they didn't call it a touchdown.
Yes.
I was only worried about whether it was a touchdown or not. Did you think I was worried about his health?
Yes.
No. Not at that point.
No.
But
the type of game he had, you just talking about what he showed you tonight.
No. Dak can do those flips, okay? Dak can do it all. But seriously, he had a very physical game. He give them their due. And I thought he played an outstanding game at not only just effectively getting, winning the game, but basically taking what was given him. And then I thought that when we stepped out and we said we've got to open it up and throw the ball, I thought he was up to the task. That's a shame, 85, that we didn't get that play there. That was one that neither one of them, let's just give Seattle credit for doing those kinds of things. They catch those interceptions, bouncing off people's helmets and things, and that's a credit to the way their aggressive way they play defense.
y'all won't know who you play until tomorrow night. How do you approach that, and do you have a preference for who you face next weekend?
I don't have a preference at all, and both of them are going to be formidable. We'll certainly be underdogs, and they've had great years, and I just can't say enough about them. Their record, they're as good a team as their records, each one of them that we might play.
Jared, do you find yourself rooting for the Eagles at all in hopes to host an NFC title game here at AT&T Stadium?
Yes.
Jerry,
yes, I do.
Jerry, if you have to put this win in perspective, considering how the season started 3-5, you had 7 out of 8 games, and now this game as well. How important is this game for you guys?
Well, this is payday for a lot of work and a lot of good things happening, but at the end of the day, we understand our accountability has to do with, to some degree, how we played today and whether we can win this game or not. We've still got some accounting to do, and comes up next week, and it'll just be another level of really a rewarding year. And the old adage about this game is you just shouldn't count it out. We've got a lot of tools in the NFL. We can trade. We can bring people in that aren't on rosters. There's a lot of machinations you can do. It's a credit to your coaching staff and players that when you bring players in like Cooper and you bring them in the middle of the season, that they can incorporate them into a team that then can really execute and really have success, whereas they weren't. So that says a lot about the team too.
Hey, back to Chris Richard, what I was asking about earlier. Is there anything you can try to do to, you kept Jason years ago when he had 2 head coaching jobs. Are you kind of trying to figure out how you might be able to keep him almost in a similar vein?
I've got a house out here between the Oklahoma line and here. You handcuff him, you tie him up, and you don't let him out to the game next week. Right before the game.
Is that right? Okay. All right.
That'll
like
work. I've done things like that before.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
I didn't see a wink on that.
That's right.
What else here? This is all the interviews set up this weekend?
They're set up tomorrow.
And they will be here?
Yes.
So all the team can come and...
Yes.
Yes. I'm at the Star where?
We had one owner that was here at the game tonight that'll be interviewing him that had the staff at our ball game tonight as our guest.
Is that a pretty open conversation with you?
What?
Like between you and Chris talking about what's going on, is there a lot of transparency in that?
Oh yes, it's very open. You would communicate and share with him any calls that we may have had or any requests that we may have had. Yes.
Which owner was here tonight? The Jets was here tonight. Which owner was here tonight? The Jets?
The Miami's.
Ross. The whole staff. Okay.
Yeah. And they own.
Okay.
He may have just wanted to see a playoff game.
All right, there he was, and Jerry and Ed, you heard me joking with Jerry about Stephen Ross being here and wanting to maybe get a look at a playoff game, and Jerry, well, he laughed. He feels like Stephen Ross was one of the few owners who stood up for him when everybody was ready to do away with
last
Jerry.
year.
Yes. He said,
that was another interesting moment. Was Roger Goodell was here?
Yes, Roger was in the house up there hanging out with Charles Haley.
Yeah, well, he was on the sideline and met with the Jones family, including Jerry, and had a very nice conversation. And obviously, wasn't much more than a year ago, those two were at absolute war with each other over Zeke Elliott and Jerry contesting Roger Goodell's contract extension. But that's all long ago now.
Long ago, and here we go. Cowboys headed toward the divisional round in the playoffs. And of course, Dak was asked about this. Jerry was asked about it. Nobody's ever going to say, we have a preference. Yeah, we want to play the Rams. We want to play the Saints. There's two ways. I mean, guys like us, though, we're allowed to say who you think the Cowboys' preference would be. I mean, on one hand, the Saints came in here and the Cowboys just torpedoed them, a dominant defensive performance, and they beat them 13-10 in this place. Now, playing on the road is a tough thing. Jerry tried to make the point, and you heard him say, adversity playing on the road, that type of thing can be good. That can be galvanizing for a team. But we've seen it. It is difficult to go on the road and get a win. And in whatever stats, you're great at all this research. The number one, the top seeds have been on a long run with playoff success.
The top seeds have filled 9 of the 10 Super Bowl berths in the last 5 years. The only failure was the 2016 Cowboys. Every other number one seed in the last 5 years has made the Super Bowl.
So going, and again, it's either New Orleans or...
But you know what's interesting, as we look about the two possibilities, the Saints, the effort that they put forth against the Saints and the result that they got was historic. It was the worst offensive game that Drew Brees and Sean Payton have ever had in all their years together in New Orleans. It was not a fluke. Chris Richard, that's what got everybody's attention with Chris Richard. Talk about Chris Richard getting a head coaching job. That game, more than any other, is the one that got everybody's attention because nobody does that to the Saints. I mean, they were on an incredible run, and they have not been the same team since. And you know why they haven't been the same team since? Because everybody that's played them subsequently has tried to copy what the Cowboys did so effectively. I talked to Ron Rivera, the head coach of the Carolina Panthers.
Riverboat Ron.
And he is a defensive-oriented head coach himself, a great defensive coach. That's his orientation. He plays in their division. They play the Saints twice every year. And yet he told me we borrowed things that we saw the Cowboys do against Drew Brees. And mainly that was getting inside pressure and playing man up on the receivers and being physical at the line of scrimmage so Brees did not have somewhere to go with the football quickly. That was the whole plan. And it's been copied. It was copied by Tampa Bay, which held the score down, Carolina, which held the score down, and I think it's probably something Sean Payton and Brees are spending a lot of time on during their bye week.
It may be a reason Chris Richard's getting about 3 job interviews.
Exactly.
That's
what got everybody's attention
on a Sunday during the season. Used to be weird. There used to not in years past. Ed, correct me if I'm wrong. Sometimes coaches that were in the playoffs
you had to wait.
Yeah,
till their teams got eliminated. But
then
it was obviously unfair to those guys.
Totally. But that went on for a pretty good while.
Yeah.
I have been told. I think I tweeted this. If I didn't, I'll say it for our audience. Last year when Chris Richard was receiving interest from another team, Sanjay Lal was a guy he wanted to take with him, the Cowboys wide receivers coach. I think he would try to take him again. I want to remind everybody, even if it was an offensive coordinator position, Cowboys could still block it because the only one they can't block is a head coaching opportunity, and that's what Chris Richard is. So, Cowboys will try to keep the staff together, but that would be tough. I mean, they lost Matt Eberflus. And
you saw his fine work in the other play in the AFC wild card game on Saturday.
He kept the Texans down. It is that time, Ed, and you wait for it. A lot of folks always talk about it. We do our grades. That's a stretch with Glenn Stretch Smith, former Cowboys coach and scout.
Stretch, as you come to us, you were out here tonight and right across the parking lot doing some live TV right after this one, but for WFAA and Del Hansen and the whole gang over there. Stretch, let's start with an area of this team, boy, you've been extremely tough on, special teams, and this has caused you to use profanity. You even, I think you even drew Ed into using some profanity last time out. This was some good and bad. These coverage units still a little scary, although 48. I thought Joe Thomas one time went down there and made a really kind of a big-time tackle when Lockett looked like he was going to get free around the end, though. But now Tavon Austin obviously looks like he's brought a real spark to the return game. How did you grade this special teams effort?
Yeah, they did a nice job with the return. I mean, you can tell that Tavon's got great vision. I mean, he sees things. He's real patient. I mean, I like him back there returning punts. I think he's obviously. I think he looks to be still a little nicked. He was in the open field there for the second one and kind of pulled up. But the first one I thought was a really questionable call. The thing that concerns me so much, guys, are these coverage units. I mean, they've got to clean up these coverage units. I for the life of me, I can't understand really covering a kick is all about attitude, crossing a guy's face, and staying in your lane. And for whatever reason, I mean, they have not been very good. Now, you know, you got to give them a winning effort for what they did in the return game. Still a huge concern with me with their coverage units. You know, because of the return game, I mean, it really bordered on, you know, what I thought was going to be a really good grade, but giving up those returns and continuing to be bad in the coverage game, you know, they got a few guys that look like they run down and they got Velcro on them. Hell, they get locked up with a guy. They're not crossing guys' face, and that concerns me. So because of that, you know, I'm going to give this group a B, but I did think they had a heck of a night, you know, in the return game.
Yeah. And the kicker actually made a saving tackle there on one of those one of those returns there at the end of the half. All right, let's start with the defense. As Ed has already pointed out, it looked like Seattle really struggling in the run game, something that's worked for them all season. But once Russell Wilson got to throwing the ball downfield a little bit, found some success, especially kind of along the boundary there. What did you make of the way this secondary played? You know, I thought that was a rough matchup. Of course, when they got that one-on-one matchup with Woods out there, that was a really good matchup for Seattle. But as you assess this whole secondary, what'd you come up with?
Yeah, they caught him. They caught him one time, and you know, in some coverage issues and some matchup issues. But the thing that concerns me really more than that, guys, is their inability to play the football in the air. I mean, I for the life of me, I can't understand why Byron Jones, and Awuzie did get his hands on that last deep fade that they threw, but I mean, he was there twice in coverage, couldn't get his hand on the ball, and that is really concerning to me, and it is especially concerning on the other side with Byron Jones. I mean, this is a guy that we talked about it. I mean, he made the Pro Bowl without an interception. And so I didn't like that he got fooled on that 7 pump, you know, where it looks like they're going to run to the corner and then he skinnied it up in there. I mean, you got to be smarter than that. You can't get beat on those kind of routes, especially where they were at that point in the game. I think our secondary is still continuing to develop and grow. Heath is a good player. He's not a great tackler, but he's a smart guy that makes the checks and obviously gets them in position. I like Woods. Yeah, he got in a tough matchup tonight, but boy, it concerns me the corners and their ability or lack of ability to play that football in the air. And because of that, I'm just going to give this group a B-. All
right, B- for the secondary. Linebackers, one thing that stood out to me on that one long touchdown drive Seattle had there in the third quarter, Sean Lee was on the field, and they left. I'm sure Vander Esch came out there at some point on that drive, but Sean Lee started that drive for the Cowboys. What did you see from that group?
Yeah, he's just. I think his time, really Sean's time, is just going to be. He's going to have to be limited to that backup role right now because the other two guys can absolutely fly around, and it's really what has cemented this defense into being a top 5 defense in the league. I mean, they spied Russell Wilson one time on that first drive with Jalen. I think they pointed it out on the TV copy, and then he was able to flush him. Then when they flushed him, he batted the football down. I mean, Vander Esch, heck of a player. They can cover. I'm saying cover down the field. They're fast. I mean, this unit is a really, really good unit. I like Sean Lee as a backup. I don't want to lean on him anymore. I just think these other two young men have just surpassed him as far as their level of play, ability to make plays, ability to chase the football, speed, all those things. And both of them are very smart players too. I mean, that's something that you don't really see is those guys that can really run. And I mean, they're really intuitive. They're sound with what they do. So now I'm giving that group a B+ and really a great job tonight from the linebacking corps.
Would you be willing, I know it's kind of late, you've already done some TV, would you give it a wolf howl real quick just so we can kind of see how you would do it?
I'm out here in Toledo. I'll give you a little, there you go.
Stretch with that's not a bad call there. That's not a bad call. You might have a couple of coyotes show up around you. Boy, they've been really, tough to deal with out in Frisco lately. Okay, up front, the defensive tackles, defensive ends, Lawrence and his group, and obviously Malik Collins made a big play early in this game. Made a couple, actually. What did you think of the way the guys up front played?
You know, I did a great job. Now I'm gonna kind of break this down a little bit, Matt, because I thought the ends did a good job. I mean, I thought what you saw out of Gregory, what you saw out of Lawrence, really good job by them. And I like the way the defensive ends are playing and have played all year. For that reason, I'm going to give them a B. But I'm going to tell you something: the inside guys, Collins, Woods, those guys are busting it up in there. They did a great job tonight in being able to close that pocket in around Russell Wilson, get that push. I don't know if you noticed, but, you know, they tightened that. Instead of being kind of a 2-eye or a 3 outside eye of the guard, they tightened that other tackle down where he was in there getting double-teamed at times because he's down over the center in a one technique. They got great push. The defensive tackles are going to get an A, and really they did an excellent job tonight with how they were continuously pushing the pocket and what they were doing and to stuff the run game and to stuff some of that. A for the defensive tackles, B for the ends. Nice. I like it when you break it down like that. And Woods, one of the most underrated acquisitions they've made. Let's go to the other side. Quarterback, Dak Prescott. Obviously, he's had trouble against the Seattle Seahawks and gets the win. And certainly with the sort of, if you're going to pick an iconic play from this game, Zeke had a couple of carries, but also the 3rd and 14. And there goes Dak racing through there and gets all the way down to the 1-yard line. What'd you make of his effort this evening? Oh, you know what? This young man is really coming into his own. There was a play in the first half when he threw the touchdown to Gallup that I really liked. It looked like there was some confusion, and I think there was some confusion between Noah Brown and Tavon Austin. I mean, who was really going to line up, where they were lining up. They were having to move some guys in and out of the game because some guys got nicked. Well, what I loved was I thought he was going to take a timeout there. He noticed man-to-man coverage, stayed with it, threw the fade for a touchdown. Now, that's the good side. The thing that's concerning to me is on the last drive where he threw the interception, the play before that to Cooper where they run that deep cross. Boy, he's got to set his feet. That should have been a touchdown. And then when he left that ball inside and the ball got intercepted by Wright, that concerns me. But let me tell you, I flipped the page one more time. What continues to show up with this young man is his ability to not let that bother him. I love his demeanor on the sideline. Mm-hmm. When he comes to the sideline, you know, you don't see any real slamming to the helmet, throwing the Surface iPad, not doing any of that. He's going to get right back into the game, and he knew he was going to take his team down for a win. Now, the call on the quarterback draw was just a great call. I mean, I thought it was at the right time. I've been critical of Scott Lanahan, but, the offensive coordinator and the quarterback pretty much tied at the hip. Because of that, I'm going to give both those guys the coordinator, I'm going to grade him a little bit tonight, give him a B. I thought he did a great job of calling the game, and I thought Dak did an excellent job of executing the game plan. Scott Linehan with the B. I am shocked. Running back Zeke Elliott puts up another, big 136 yards, has another big effort for the Cowboys, always active in the passing game. What sort of grade would you give him? Yeah, he just a great job again. I mean, Zeke is such a – he really is what you want as a running back. I mean, there were a couple times tonight where there was nothing there. He just bows his neck and hits it up in there. He's a heck of a football player, guys. And on effort tonight, I mean, when he broke that ball outside and was able to stiff arm Griffin, I mean, I'm giving the running back an A because he really did a great job tonight in the running game, and that's really what won the football game for him. Okay, and then up front, the offensive line, there were some tough moments. Obviously, Frank Clark and others got in there and created a little havoc. How did the offensive line hold up? Looked like they were having some trouble handling some of those stunts or games. Yeah, they did. Connor Williams has got to get better. He's he's a little bit of the wink link in that offensive line. I mean, he needs to learn how to set more square and be able to, when they do run that tackle and then that end comes up underneath and they run that stunt, you got to stay square so that you could pass that off with your tackle. But, they did an okay job. Again, another workmanlike effort. I'm going to group the tight ends in with that group because I thought the tight ends played okay. You know, a real workmanlike effort. I don't like the fact that they're having to really still suit 3 tight ends when Gathers is not really a special teams player. That really concerns me a little bit. I'm not sure what they're doing with the numbers when they go to get their their inactives and their actives. But I think that as a whole, the offensive line, the tight ends, they gave you a very workmanlike effort tonight. They got beat some with those stunts, but I thought they did a pretty good job of blocking the perimeter of the tight ends. I thought the offensive line was physical in the red zone. Because of that, I'm going to give them a B.
All right, B for all those guys, tight ends, offensive line. What about this group of wide receivers? Obviously, just a horrific injury with that ankle to Alan Hearns, and looks like a dislocated ankle, and knee also looks like there's some there could be some damage. I mean, just a really devastating injury early in this game. But the rest of the crew, between Tavon Austin and then obviously Cooper, what would you give this group?
Well, I thought this group played well. Now, I like Noah Brown. I've liked Noah Brown for a long time. He's kind of tweener in between, kind of a tight end, kind of H-back. He's a bigger receiver. I think Amari Cooper and Gallup are both really fine players. I like how Beasley fought through, that ankle injury. I'm a little concerned next week, guys. I'm going to be honest with you. They're going to have to do something to kind of get this crew to gel together a little better. And when I say gel together, like when on Cooper's when they ran that big dig route, I like it. We used to kind of call that a wrap, where he wrapped that out behind that post route that was outside. And so I like some of the things that they're doing. However, some of the route running to me is still a little iffy by Noah Brown. I mean, if he's going to be a receiver, he needs to be a great route runner, because I think Hearns is a good route runner. I think Tavon does a nice job inside. Beasley does a nice job, but they've got to get that shored up now if they're going to go, if they're going to go to LA or to New Orleans, wherever that may be, and win the next game. Somebody's going to have to step up and take the majority of those reps. I gave that group a B and a very workmanlike effort, which is about what your offense gave you tonight.
24-22, and then we'll find out after tomorrow's game, obviously, where the Cowboys will end up. And Stretch, real quick, is there any of those teams, either the Saints or the Rams, you think the Cowboys would, if they told you the truth, would rather go up against? I mean, on the surface, the Superdome's a extremely tough place to play. I think that's a tougher place to play than the Coliseum. But they obviously had some success against New Orleans.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I think if they had their druthers, the way their run defense is playing right now, and let's be honest, man, defense is carrying this football team right now. Defense and running the football. I think the matchup fits better with the Rams. I think that if Philadelphia could win tomorrow in Chicago, I think that helps you. Now, we saw Indianapolis, who's probably playing the best football, go to Houston and win. I think Philadelphia's hit their stride. I mean, wouldn't that be something? They beat Chicago and then go to New Orleans. Now, what if they beat New Orleans and then I know I'm getting carried away here. Dallas wins in L.A. You might get an NFC Championship game back here in Dallas. I think there's a lot of things that can happen here, but I do think that the matchup, if I had to guess and be honest, I think that the Cowboys would rather, and I think they do match up better with the Rams than they do with the Saints, even though they handled the Saints earlier this year.
Well, I appreciate it. You did some good work tonight out here at Arlington. It's good to have the whole Doomsday family. Ed working sidelines for Westwood One. You out here, WFAA. Frito in the house tonight. Good to have the family together, and appreciate it. Stretch it. We will talk to you soon as we get ready to find out who the Cowboys face in the divisional playoff game.
And there he was, Glenn Stretch Smith, with his grades. And, boy, Ed Werder, as we get back into this thing, and we are right here in AT&T Stadium, the aftermath, 24-22 win, Cowboys. You were down the sideline for Westwood One, and were able to talk to a lot of folks before and after this game. Now, before we hear from basically the man of the hour, Amari Cooper, had another big game. And isn't it amazing, Ed? And I know you got a couple things here to share on Amari Cooper, but even when I just look at the targets, 9 targets, 7 receptions. Think about one of the big criticisms of Des Bryant, kind of in his later time with the Cowboys. It was just, they would target him however many times, 11 or 12 times. He might have 4 or 5 catches. It just wasn't a great sort of conversion rate. In Cooper, it just seems like they have a nice chemistry.
Well, there's no question that trade, reversed their fortunes, especially as an offense. And since he came to Dallas in Week 9, he was one of only 3 NFL receivers who had 700 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. The other 2 receivers were Julio Jones and Antonio Brown. So that's the kind of performance that they've gotten in exchange for their first-round pick, which now will not be higher than, 25. The Raiders are giving up Amari Cooper, a Pro Bowl receiver at 24 years old with a bright future to grow alongside Dak Prescott and Zeke Elliott going forward for nothing better than the 25th pick in the upcoming NFL draft, and that's assuming the Cowboys lose their next game. What he's done at home is remarkable. So if the Cowboys could somehow get the NFC Championship game in Dallas, it might make a huge difference, because in his now 6 home games with the Cowboys, Amari Cooper has 42 catches for 657 yards and 6 touchdowns. So he's a different player when he's here. But obviously at the end of the year, he did not put up big numbers the last 3 or 4 games. But I know, talking to Scott Linehan, he felt like what they established in Week 17 with Cole Beasley and Blake Jarwin, and the way the Seahawks play with their single high safety, basically you're going to get a lot of man-to-man coverage outside, and that Amari Cooper was going to have a big game, and he did have a 100-yard game, and I got a chance to speak to him about that performance afterward.
Hey guys, I'm with the player who's changed the Cowboys' fortunes in the middle of the season when they traded the first draft pick to the Oakland Raiders and acquired wide receiver Amari Cooper. Amari, you came here, the Cowboys were 3-4. How rewarding is it to win your first playoff game?
Very rewarding. We know how hard we work. If you look at this team, man, you can see it in the way we play that we deserve this, man. We come out each and every week, man. We prepare the right way, and we fight hard in these games. And so it's very rewarding, and I'm excited to see what's in store.
How did you quickly develop the trust with your quarterback, Dak Prescott?
Man, we just had that chemistry. As soon as I got in, we talked a lot. We watched a lot of stuff together, and it just clicked for whatever reason. I think it was God. Thank God.
The coaches were saying that they thought there would be some opportunities for you tonight. You went over 100 yards after. The last 3 or 4 games have been difficult, but you've been outstanding in almost every home game. Why is that?
I don't know. I don't want to chalk it up to mere coincidence that it's just been the home games, but I'll take it. I'll definitely take it. The fans out here are amazing, so I'll say that's what it is.
What's the confidence level you have in this offense after you guys scored 24 and won the game tonight in a tough fashion against the Seahawks?
Yeah, obviously I'm confident in my guys. Like I said, we know how we prepare, but I think we left a lot of food on the table, so to speak. So we have to go back to work.
Amari, congratulations on what you've done for the Cowboys and advancing to the divisional round of the playoffs next week. Thank you.
There he was, Amari Cooper on Westwood One with Ed right after the game, and Ed, Dak Prescott, big breakthrough for him. He has won a playoff game before, but doing against a Seattle team that he struggled against, and a quarterback, Ed, that Russell Wilson has moments. He still makes some incredible throws where he drops the ball in, and you think there's no room on the sideline. He and Lockett seem to have an incredible connection, but I think there's something to be said for not only knocking off a Seattle team that's had a really good playoff pedigree and a coach that's one of the most revered coaches in the NFL, but beating Seattle says something for this franchise.
Well, Seattle had the longest current streak in the NFL in terms of winning at least one playoff game every year they qualify for each of the past 9 years. Russell Wilson had never lost a wild card playoff game until tonight. So those are some of the things that the Cowboys accomplished. And it was really a historic performance for Dak Prescott in his first postseason win. He's the first quarterback in Cowboys history to run for a touchdown and throw for a touchdown in a playoff game. Doesn't seem like that would be a unique feat to the Cowboys who have, Tony Romo's run for some touchdowns in his day, and Roger Staubach was one of the great scrambling quarterbacks of all time, but neither of them had ever done what Dak Prescott did in this particular game tonight. I think the other thing is that they were really good in the red zone. That's been their biggest offensive flaw all year long. But tonight they went 3 for 4 scoring touchdowns in the red zone. And in the previous 2 games that they lost to Seattle earlier this year and last year, they were a combined 1 for 5 in the red zone. So that's a substantial improvement that if they can continue, then they've got a chance to win again going forward.
Yeah, they do. All you can do is try to put yourself in position for this. And Ed, just a remarkable effort to get this thing done. And I just have to, think about what we've thought about this team and what we've said and the narrative and how a lot of us had already pretty much said goodbye to Jason Garrett. Think of what for this franchise. Now, there are franchises that are spoiled, and this one has been one of those over the years. But over the past 20 years or so, that really hasn't been the case. Reaching an NFC title game, dare I even mention it, would be just enormous for this fan base and for this franchise. And I think I could even sense it in here, and you could hear it when you heard from Jerry earlier. The thought of Jason Garrett breaking through to that point, that would, for Jerry, finally pay off, because I think what Jerry says, and it almost sounds like he's kind of patronizing to Jason, he admits there's some things that Jason's really taken some time to learn. Most coaches, you don't want it to have to take this long. But Jerry, God love him, as opposed to maybe years ago with Chan Gailey, famously with Jimmy. Certainly, Campo had a pretty sad little run there for about 3 years. But Jerry has stuck with this head coach, and if it paid off, that would be the ultimate in Jerry saying, "I told you. There was a reason I stuck with this man." And the Cowboys are close to having that happen. Say what you will, reaching an NFC title game would get Jason, I think, a fairly lengthy extension.
Well, he is going into the last year of his contract in 2019, but he hasn't done what you've spoken about yet. He still has to win another game, and it's been
I'm talking about
4-9 in the postseason now since they won their last Super Bowl. So I wouldn't presume that they're going to win the next game, but I think that you have to look at it like this. It's never going to be easier for them than it is now. And by that I mean they've got advantages with the youth of their team relative to the salary cap that they're probably not going to have again. They've got a quarterback who's charging like $725,000 to their cap. The quarterback they played against tonight charges about $25 million to the cap. So,
correct. Yeah.
So they're not going to have that opportunity. They've got a running back who's one of the great players in the entire league who's on an undervalued rookie contract. And this will be the first time this offseason that they can do anything about that. They're going to have to re-sign Amari Cooper. They're going to have to re-sign DeMarcus Lawrence, Byron Jones. So this is the best chance that they're going to have.
Cole Beasley.
So this is the best chance financially in terms of how well they can structure their team that they're going to have for probably the next 8 or 10 years. So they need to take advantage of it.
This is a huge opportunity, and I'd be remiss if I didn't add at this point the Hodges Capital, Craig and Clark Hodges, who've been incredible to us over 30 years. Hodges Capital has had one primary focusing on U.S. stocks. 10-person investment team combs the investment landscape and handpicks selected, undervalued, and underfollowed companies. I mean, that seems like they're describing the Doomsday Podcast. If you're looking for someone to make your investment assets grow, consider Hodges Capital Management, and you can go to HodgesCapital.com or HodgesFunds.com. The Hodges brothers, Craig and Clark, doing an incredible job, and love having them a part of this. Ed, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be a fun week, and I'm sure you and I might even drop by the facility, go out to Frisco, see how the fellows are doing this week, and then, of course, we'll be back with everybody in the aftermath of a divisional playoff game. And it'll be either against New Orleans or the Rams. And to your point from earlier, the fact Chicago gave the Rams fits. They beat the Rams, and they slowed down that offense. Cowboys did the same thing to New Orleans. Now, these are different animals when you have to go on the road, which the Cowboys are going to have to do. But again, part of this is, have you demonstrated it? And at least in that instance against a superpower team like New Orleans, the Cowboys have. And Chicago kind of showed the way against the Rams. There's no reason to go into one of those two places with kind of the hat in the hand mentality.
I think the Cowboys would take a lot of confidence into the Superdome against the Saints, believing, this is a young, energetic defensive team. They think they can do anything. They'll go in there believing that they can make Breeze and Sean Payton look bad on offense again. I think it'd be quite a challenge to do that. They're undefeated during the Sean Payton, Drew Brees era at home in the playoffs. They're 5-0 in the Superdome. So it would be an enormous challenge, but it would be that great a victory if they could achieve it.
Yeah. I think it would be, Cowboys would be 4-point underdogs if they go to New Orleans, and they would be 6-point underdogs if they go to the Coliseum against the Rams.
I wonder how many Cowboy fans would be in the Coliseum.
They'll get their way in there. They'll be there. Well, I hope to be. I don't know if I hope to be at the press box. We'll see. But it'll be exciting either way. But I think you're right. The Cowboys Coliseum, you have a better chance in that huge place to get your crowd in there via StubHub and SeatGeek and all that.
And they have their training camp base out there, so
that's right.
Sure.
All the good folks from Oxnard will
all
be.
the Oxnarders will be out there. Oxnarders.
I wish they would play this game at that place where San Diego is playing right now. I'd like to see a divisional playoff game.
30,000 people.
I'd like to see a playoff game in that facility. Ed, great job. I thought it was good to have Mark Friedman out here. Boy, he really functions well in a suite. And thanks to Mark Murray, the Hall of Fame. Just a great suite. In fact, Witten, I don't know if you knew that, Ed, Witten's suite is like just right over there to the left.
But he was busy today. He was covering the game in Houston, I think. So
how did he do? I didn't get to hear much of him.
I didn't hear any of him.
Okay, all right. So
I think he did better than Deshaun Watson and Bill O'Brien.
That's true. I hate that because
you know what? Next week, another potential historic moment for Dak Prescott.
Werder Nugget coming.
He can match Tony Romo's postseason win total in 13 years in just his third season.
Boy, I tell you can always count on Ed for a negative Tony Romo comment. One of the many reasons Tony continues not to come on this podcast. It has been a good one, live from AT&T Stadium, and we want to say good night, everybody.
Just in and so good. Thousands of spring deals at your Nordstrom Rack store. Save big today on new arrivals from Kate Spade New York, Nike, Sam Edelman, Free People, and Madewell, starting at only $30. Great brands and great prices on dresses, denim, sandals, designer bags, and more. So rack your look and get first dibs on spring styles you want now from just $30 at your Nordstrom Rack store. What will you find?
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.